this election coincides with LDC graduation, and I do think that for countries to thrive after graduation, the quality of governance becomes really important. Differ. I think what I'd highlight is how much they're the same. Obviously, the perspectives are different because we're starting from different places. But, I mean, they both share a similar commitment to basic principles on rules-based international system, to freedom of navigation, to freedom of trade, the sort of basic constitutional freedoms which we think, as I said, are the best foundation for a free society. And we work with others. I mean, we're working together with others. Both the US and ourselves are working with others in this space. So we are not members of the Quad, which of course is Japan, India, Australia, the US, but we are members of AUKUS, which is Australia, the UK and the US. So we are very much part of the sort of regional frameworks. And I think what our Foreign Secretary has described as our global strategy is what she describes as a network of liberty. And I think the Indo-Pacific strategy and the Indo-Pacific tilt are all really ways of supporting a network of liberty in the Indo-Pacific region. And as I said, the way it's expressed may be slightly different, but the founding principles are really very much the same. So that's the first question. On the second question, I mean, we profoundly deplore what is happening in Myanmar. We are very concerned about the seizure of power by the generals. We're very, very concerned about the oppression that has followed, the killing of over 1,000 unarmed demonstrators, the imprisonment of Aung San Suu Kyi, and we have used our sanctions legislation to sanction top members of the Burmese leaders of the coup, and we have discouraged our businesses from investing in Myanmar. To be honest, I think Myanmar now is a very unattractive place for businesses. I mean, as I said in my talk, businesses want to go to places where there is predictability, stability, rule of law, and those things are not present in Myanmar. So we are already seeing businesses themselves taking their own decisions, and they are drawing down. British business is doing much less business in Myanmar now than it did 2 or 3 years ago. So, there is a great deal of pressure coming on, both politically and economically. And obviously what we would hope is that others will apply the same sort of pressures that we're applying ourselves, so that we can see the early restoration of democracy in Myanmar, which clearly be the best outcome for that country, but also so that it can help to resolve the Rohingya crisis, which can only be resolved with a solution in Myanmar. It's a huge pleasure to be addressing the Dhaka Reporters Unity this afternoon, the last day of Bengali winter, which I have to say is my favourite season. I've got some fairly short, sort of 15 minutes worth of prepared remarks, which I will deliver, and then I'm more than happy to take questions on anything. So I hope that works for you. Please come up with challenging questions, and I will look forward to answering them. Because I think it's really important. The free media is the absolute cornerstone of a free society. The press plays an absolutely fundamental role in holding the powerful to account. And that has to be in uncomfortable ways, because as George Orwell said, freedom of the press, if it means anything at all, means the freedom to criticise and oppose. So I'm constantly impressed, I have to say, by the courage and commitment of journalists like yourselves in Bangladesh. I know there are many challenges to being a journalist here, but I'm always amazed how, despite the pressure, interesting, challenging, worthwhile media is produced every day. And with like-minded colleagues, with other like-minded countries, we're leading a media freedom coalition, which will continue to be a key part of our work as the High Commission here in Bangladesh. But for the reasons that our colleagues have mentioned, it's actually a really exciting time to be British High Commissioner in Dhaka. I've been here for almost exactly 3 years, and I've thoroughly enjoyed that 3 years. But this month, as you've said, marks the 50th anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic relations between the UK and Bangladesh. And of course that followed Bangabandhu's historic flight to London when he was released from Pakistan, his first press conference as a free man at Claridge's, his meeting with our then Prime Minister Edward Heath, and his flight back to a newly liberated Bangladesh by the Royal Air Force. And in the intervening half-century, the relationship between the UK and Bangladesh has really gone from strength to strength. And as you mentioned, we have a Brit Bangla Bondon campaign, a campaign to really highlight the links between our two countries, which builds on the organic connections that exist between the UK and Bangladesh, starting with 600,000 people of Bangladeshi heritage living in the UK, making a contribution, increasingly prominent contribution to our society, but also a wide range of links, whether it's on security, defence, climate, COVID, trade, and a whole range of issues on which we work very closely together as governments. And we do this in line with our global strategy. We have left the European Union. We left 2 years ago. We completed our transition arrangements a year ago. So we are now free to make our own policy. And we are putting a strong emphasis on the Indo-Pacific region, which is the fastest growing economic region in the world, a crucial transit point for global trade, and a region where Bangladesh has a crucial role to play. Bangladesh plays a key role in upholding global norms, as do we. We hugely value the role that Bangladesh plays in the rules-based international system, particularly as a contributor to UN peacekeeping. But it's fair to say, I think, when we look at the rules-based international system, that it feels more under pressure now, today, than it has done really at any time since it came into being after the Second World War. And I think we're all looking with deep misgivings at what is going on around Ukraine, and we're all very conscious that an unprovoked Russian aggression against Ukraine would be a disaster for everybody involved, absolutely not least the Russian people and probably the Russian government themselves. So our ministers, British ministers, including the Foreign Secretary Liz Truss and the Defence Secretary Ben Wallace and the Prime Minister Boris Johnson, have been at the forefront of international efforts to find a diplomatic solution to the problem of Ukraine. And we have been providing Ukraine with the weapons and training that it needs for self-defence if those diplomatic efforts fail, in the hope that we can build a deterrent to the Russians to taking the action that we are clear that they should not take. But closer to home, here in Bangladesh, we're working very closely with British businesses and across our government in building a relationship with Bangladesh as Bangladesh looks forward to the prospect of graduating from least developed to middle-income country status, which is an extraordinary achievement. It's really remarkable, based on decades of good development policy, and I'm delighted that the Honourable Prime Minister and other senior members of her government were able to take that case to investors and people in the UK during her visit to the UK at the end of last year for COP. And she then went on to a roadshow making clear the opportunities for people in the UK to contribute to and benefit from growth in Bangladesh. But I would stress that graduation from LDC status is a milestone, not a finishing line. And I think it's very important that the economy continues to develop and evolve to ensure that graduation will be a smooth process and that Bangladesh can continue with export-led growth in the decades that follow. We're contributing to that. We are already Bangladesh's third largest export market and second largest investor. And we will continue to work with Bangladesh to provide duty-free, quota-free access to the UK market until at least 2029. So there will be a period after graduation where we will continue to provide access to our market as the economy here evolves. And we're also working, as I said, we're now outside the European Union, which gives us the opportunity to develop a bilateral trade relationship with Bangladesh. And we're working very hard to work with the government and investors here to try and open up this market so that it becomes more friendly to the sort of foreign investment which will be needed to diversify and develop the economy as a result of LDC status. And we see particular opportunities for high-value UK goods and services. We make some of the best products and services in the world, and we think that as the Bangladesh economy continues to develop, as there's more prosperity here, then there will be greater mutual benefit to the goods and services that Britain can provide, the very high-quality goods and services that Britain can provide, being more widely available in Bangladesh. And I see a particular opportunity in the sectors of financial, educational and health services. And I see a particular opportunity again for universities if we can have the cross-border higher education rules implemented in a way that enables British universities, many of whom we know are interested in investing in Bangladesh, actually to be able to come here and open up the sort of foreign campuses that they have been very successful in developing in countries like Sri Lanka and Malaysia. Because I think there's a huge amount of talent in Bangladesh, an immense number of young people who would really benefit from being able to gain a globally competitive British education without having to pay the enormous costs and disruption of actually going to the UK to get it. And that is a model, as I say, that has worked very well elsewhere in Asia, and we are very keen to bring to Bangladesh. And we think could be a really good contribution to the continued growth of the economy, because one thing Bangladesh has in abundance is talented young people, and one thing we can offer is the education which will enable those talented young people to make the most, acquire the skills to make the most of their talents in the cause both of their own prosperity but also the continued development of the country. So we're very keen for our universities to come and offer what they can offer here in Bangladesh. More broadly, I think it's important to stress that our view is that long-term stability and economic growth flourish best in open and democratic societies with strong institutions which can provide public accountability and competitive elections. So with international partners, we support the plural and transparent democracy in Bangladesh, which is provided in the 1972 Constitution. And we urge a fair and credible process for the elections, which of course are due at the end of next year. And I think there are 4 elements that I would just mention for this. The first means allowing all parties to organise and be heard in advance of the election and to promote a real national debate about performance of the government and the future of the country and different models in which the future of the country might play out. It means a free, fair debate. The second thing I think it means is enabling everyone to cast their vote freely, so people can go to the polling stations and be confident that they can cast their vote without fear or favour. The third thing is it means those votes, when they've been cast, being counted in a way that is reliable and transparent and has the confidence of everyone involved. And finally, it means the results, when they're proved to be credible, being accepted by all parties, including the parties who did not win. So I think these are really important basic principles which would enable the 1972 constitutional provision for democracy, which is a hugely admirable part of the Bangladeshi constitution, to be manifested through the next round of elections. And I think there are milestones such as the Election Commission formation process which will send a signal on the trajectory of this. And we would really welcome strong commitments from all parties on a free and fair process which would help set the tone, including an inclusive and non-partisan election commission oversight for the contest when it happens. And as part of this wider commitment to constitutional values, we stand strongly with those who support tolerance and religious freedom, which is another really important principle set out by the 1972 Constitution, which I think is really important to maintaining Bangladesh as a stable and increasingly prosperous country. So we're working with the government, with our colleagues, with friends in Bangladesh on these issues. But it's worth just mentioning before I finish some of the other issues on which we are working with our colleagues. One important one is regional security, including the Rohingya crisis, where we absolutely share with the government the aim of seeing voluntary, safe and dignified repatriation for the Rohingyas as soon as conditions in Myanmar allow. Now, clearly things in Myanmar are not going well. The coup just over a year ago was a major setback. So I think we have to accept that it may be some time until those conditions are fulfilled. But in the meantime, Bangladesh continues to be extraordinarily generous in its response to the Rohingya crisis and in providing access for the refugees to healthcare, food, shelter, water and sanitation. And we've seen that generosity manifested in the rollout of COVID-19 vaccines for the refugees. But I think it is important to recognise that the situation remains very challenging, both for the host communities among whom the Rohingyas are living, but also for the Rohingyas themselves, especially for women. So we are continuing to work very closely with the government and with the UN and with other donors to try and make sure that while the refugees have to remain in Bangladesh, they are properly supported. And we're a leading donor in this response, having contributed over £320 million since 2017, which supports both the host communities and the refugees in the camps. But we do recognise that this is a tragedy for all involved. No one chooses to live in a refugee camp. I've been to the camps on many occasions myself. And with so many refugees worldwide, the key thing is to enable the refugees to go home. And we are working closely with ASEAN, where we are now a dialogue partner, with the UN, where we're the pen holder in the Security Council, and with regional colleagues to try to create political conditions which will enable the refugees to return to Rakhine as soon as possible. So Rohingyas, I think, will continue to be a very important issue where we work closely with the government, closely with other donors and closely with the United Nations on a shared problem where the solution, the ultimate solution, lies elsewhere. On a different subject, we're supporting the COVID-19 pandemic response here. Obviously, we've just seen the latest wave of the pandemic coming through Bangladesh. We hope that, as in other countries, including the UK, the Omicron variant will turn out to be one that comes and goes quite quickly, and perhaps leaves a stronger degree of immunity in the population. But nonetheless, the real key to resolving the COVID crisis remains vaccination. And we have been very pleased to provide over 4 million doses of vaccine to Bangladesh at the end of last year. And we very much hope to be providing more in the near future. So I hope we'll be able to make announcements on that soon. In a different part of the forest, we're working hard on our defence relationship with Bangladesh. 2021 was a very good year for that. We had the first Royal Navy visit to Bangladesh for 13 years as part of the strike group, the carrier strike group that deployed to the Indo-Pacific region. And we had a frigate from that deployment coming into Chattogram, which highlighted again the very good bilateral defence relationship that we have, whether it's on UN peacekeeping, whether it's on professional military education, whether it's on the sale of equipment. On all of those things, we have a very flourishing defence relationship. I was actually at the National Defence College this morning to see some strategic training being provided by UK experts. And I'm very pleased that we plan soon to have a more strategic discussion on defence between the UK and Bangladesh, which I hope will just put all of this into the framework of our wider work in the Indo-Pacific. In another part of the forest, we have a very promising piece of work on climate. The Honourable Prime Minister played an extremely important role at the Conference of the Parties, the COP26 conference in Glasgow last year. She also met Prime Minister Boris Johnson and the Prince of Wales, so it was a very fruitful visit. She told me afterwards it was fruitful but very tiring, which I can understand. But we felt that COP was a great success and that Bangladesh played a really significant role in achieving that success. And we announced at COP the start of a new £120 million 6-year climate partnership between the UK and Bangladesh, which will give us real substance behind the relationship in dealing with this really significant, crucial global challenge, which I think applies very strongly in Bangladesh, and where we together have a huge amount that we can do to help to deal both with mitigation and with adaptation. And we can unquestionably do much more to exchange expertise, share technology, and facilitate partnerships as we look towards the common endeavour of keeping global temperatures below 1.5 degrees. So all of that's just some of the things that we're doing together. As I said, it's a really exciting time for me to be High Commissioner here in Bangladesh. I'm thoroughly enjoying every day of the work. It's full of challenge, it's full of interest, and it's also full of opportunities to explain what we do to the extremely interesting, challenging, as I said, impressive Dhaka Press Corps. So it's great to be here today. I'm very happy to take your questions. I just end by saying, Apnader Jono Shubo Kamane Roye Savaiki Onek Donabad. This is my view as a friend of Bangladesh who's lived here for 3 years. I think the point is that this election coincides with LDC graduation. And I do think that for countries to thrive after graduation, the quality of governance becomes really important. If international investors look, first of all, at whether their investment is going to be safe and productive, and that means, to some extent, whether a country is under the rule of law. And a country that has a proper, free, fair electoral process is one where I think it's more likely that the rule of law can be demonstrated, and therefore one that is more likely to attract the sort of foreign investment that is going to be needed to sustain the very impressive levels of growth here. So I do think that this election, if it's a good election, could play a really positive part in reinforcing the narrative, the very strong narrative, which I completely support, around Bangladesh as a country that is graduating from LDC status and is taking its place as a middle-income country. I mean, on the other side, if the election is problematic for any reason, then I think it becomes harder to see that sort of holistic graduation taking place. And I think it will be more problematic, certainly for companies from the UK to think about investing here if they see an election that is seriously problematic during the process, during the period when graduation will be taking place. So I do think it's really important as a mark of the development of Bangladesh that the next election is visibly credible, free and fair.